Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. There's a very important skill you're going to need as a software developer and also pre-software developer. So if you're learning to code or if you already are a developer, this is the second most important skill you're going to need. The first being coding, because you can't really be a software developer without learning how to build software. By the way, if you want to learn how to build complex software and work with senior developers as mentors, join us at Parsity.io. And if you are a software developer, check out JavaScriptProsApp.com. Anyway, this skill is the number one reason people either succeed or fail in their coding careers. I think about when I was 30 years old, about 10 years ago. Yes, I'm 40. This is why I have a podcast. When you're 40 in tech, you have two choices. You can either start a podcast or you have to buy like a Tesla Cybertruck. I chose the podcast route. And at 30, I couldn't think of really a worse time to learn to code. I had been sober for about 2 months. I had a 1-year-old at home and an 8-year-old at home. I worked an office job, like one of those jobs where you actually have to drive into work and sit in an office and wear slacks and stuff like that. I also drove Lyft and Uber on the side because, it's kind of broke. 2 kids, all that kind of stuff, living in the Bay Area. You know the deal. There was no time. Like literally, I felt like I had no time. So I had to make time. In the process of learning how to code, I learned the second most important skill that I needed to know as a software developer, the art of time management. Unfortunately, I've seen way too many developers making this mistake, not mapping out their day, being very intense, but not consistent, which leads to burnout and a lot of frustration. This is one of the major issues I see with new developers. They're very intense, meaning they do a ton of work, but they're not consistent with it. And so they don't actually see the fruits of their labor. And lastly, people not working their optimal hours. I have a pretty hot take on this one that some of you are going to like and a lot of you are not. As software developers, we're judged nearly as much on the quality of our code as the time that it takes to get delivered. And if you're learning to code, you could be learning to code for 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. I've seen people that I used to work with at a boot camp, and I'll see them years later, and I'm thinking, how's it going? And they say, well, I'm still learning. And I'm thinking, oh, that's rough. And it usually signals to me that they either, one, don't have a very good roadmap for what they're going to need to learn, or two, they really lack the time management skills necessary to learn a new skill that is as difficult as learning to code. Yes, learning to code is difficult. I don't care what advertisement out there told you differently. Yeah, it's hard, right? I mean, they're going to pay you 6 figures and up to do this stuff in most cases. So yeah, it's not going to be the easiest thing. So I'm going to share with you how I've been able to find time to code, run a side business, do over 500 calls with developers around the world, all while having a family, working full-time, doing a daily exercise routine, all that stuff. First off, if you fail to plan to fail. Cornball stuff, I know, but just give me a second here as I break it down. Have you ever sat at your computer and thought, what will I do today? I bought this Udemy course, but then I have this Leap code thing I'm doing, and then I have a side project I want to finish, and I'm learning some HTML and CSS on the side, and you get analysis paralysis. You open up 23 tabs, and you go between multiple tasks, and nothing gets done. There's a better way. The night before, or in the morning, just write down the most important thing you should be completing for the day. To make this even easier, have a notebook right on the side of your bed. It forces me at night to confront the fact that there's this notebook sitting there that I know I'm supposed to be writing in. So I'll write down, okay, what's the one thing I should do tomorrow? What's the most important thing? And if you have trouble thinking of what is the most important thing, there's actually a way to determine this too, logically. Make a matrix. Basically draw 4 squares, right, on a piece of paper if you really have trouble making decisions. And in these 4 squares, in the top left, I want you to write important but not urgent. In the top right, I want you to write important and urgent. In the bottom left, not important, not urgent. And the bottom right is going to be important, but not urgent. This should help you determine the things that are important and urgent that you should be looking at immediately, and then looking at the things that are important, but not urgent. Now, these are the things that typically will give the greatest value later on. But this is just a simple way to organize what you should be doing and make sure that you're actually getting to the thing that you're supposed to get to, rather than just bumbling around and thinking, well, what about that? What's more important, learning this or learning that? But either way it goes, it's just important that you do something. So you've done the matrix, you've written in your notebook, you know what you're supposed to do that very first thing in the day. Now, when you wake up, you do that thing immediately. And for me, that means when I get up, I go to my computer and I work on the most difficult thing for the day. No meditation, no cold plunge, just targeted work. This has helped me tremendously through the years, especially as I was raising young kids and working 2 different jobs, to find 15 to 30 minutes in the morning to just do that. Now, I have met people that have extenuating circumstances, like truck drivers or people that work insane hours and have these awful commutes. And maybe that's the reason why you're listening to a podcast like this. I would still say, if you can, find those 15 minutes a day. If you can't at all, do it on the weekend. But just have an organization, a plan on how to do it. Because if you have a plan, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to actually go through and do the thing rather than spending 15 or 20 or 30 minutes bumbling around and then just giving up. On to the next lesson. Less is more, but you need to do less more, if that makes sense. So I've taught way too many people how to code at this point. I stopped keeping track a while ago. It must be at least 100, probably over that. Here's how I know they're going to fail. I did an episode on this just last week, actually, and I went to way more in depth into it if you want to hear it. So I asked them, hey, were you able to get through that assignment? And they say, nah, not really. But don't worry, because this Saturday I got the day off, so I'm going to study for 12 hours. And I look at them, and they look at me, and I look at them, and they look at me, and I walk away. I can't think of one time this has ever worked for a student that I've personally mentored. The problem with zero studying during the week in marathon sessions on your one day off is that you enter into this hamster style wheel learning mode. And you wonder why you can't retain information despite cramming. And it's because you aren't building up that muscle memory. I remember having this exact conversation with a student who kept coming in and we were learning how to do for loops for like the third or fourth or fifth time. And I just broke down and asked him, I said, hey, are you doing the assignments throughout the week? And he's like, yeah, totally. And he showed me his work. I'm like, that's so weird. And I thought, how is this possible? But when we really broke it down, it turned out that he was doing zero work for 6 days, all of his work on a Sunday, and then basically forgetting it all week after week after week. And you do have to build up some muscle memory. Coding is not an exercise in memorization, but when you first start, it kind of is. I mean, you have to know how to declare variables. You have to know how to make an if-else statement. You have to know how to declare an object. You have to know how to write a function. You have to understand basic syntax to get things done. If you do not know the basics of JavaScript, you should totally join us at dev30.xyz. That's dev30.xyz, and learn JavaScript with us over 30 days and use it to build something on your own, join Parsity, or really get prepared for any good coding bootcamp program out there. You can fill in the other logical gaps here and there, but if you can't write a for loop, that is going to significantly delay your progress. If you wanted to get into shape, would you run like 5 miles on Saturday and eat whatever you wanted for the other 6 days? Personally, I spent about 30 to 60 minutes learning to code every day and more on the weekends when I had time. The key to my progress, like it likely will be for you, is consistency. I don't think I ever spent an entire day learning at that beginning stage. Not only because I couldn't, but because I need mental breaks. I do not do well with staring at a computer for more than a few hours at a time. Even now, when I debug something really, really difficult, or I'm working on something I really like doing, I need to take breaks here and there because there's a limit to return. I'm not a robot. I don't think you are either if you're listening to this. If you are, turn this off. Next piece of advice from me is a bit of a spicy one. So I think that everyone is a morning person. Even you that might hate waking up in the morning or you just like to stay up really late. Everyone is a morning person. You know how I know? Because humans at the beginning of time were morning people. They got up when the sun rise, right? And they went to sleep when the sun went down. They didn't stay up all night partying and doing whatever. Now take this from me. I'm a former party animal, right? I used to stay up super late, live at night, and sleep in the day. I don't do that anymore, and I don't think that most people are meant to. And I also know that developers are naturally late creatures. I've never been at a company where developer meetings start at the beginning of the day. It's almost like a joke. The salespeople would be doing their meetings super early. All the developers would be strolling on in around 10 a.m., doing their meeting around 10:30 a.m., which was always really funny to me. I'm like, geez, I don't want to stay late at work ever. I want to leave work pretty much as soon as I can. I like going in early and leaving early. That's just how I prefer to do things. That being said, the best developers I've met tended to make optimal use of the morning. For the majority of us, this is the time of the day where you're least likely to be interrupted. I write articles when my kids are asleep. I do a lot of the coding stuff I need to do when my kids are asleep. I write my LinkedIn articles and stuff like that in the morning before my kids get up and scream at me that they want pancakes. So maybe you truly are not a morning person, or you have like some very unique schedule which prevents you from working in the early part of the day. That's okay. Everyone has a time of the day where they find themselves in the zone. And again, for 99%, that's going to be the morning. So you listening, get up in the morning and do that thing. You are probably not part of that 1%, but if you are, on the off chance that you are, if you must, then find another time of the day that you can optimize for those difficult tasks like side projects, learning a new language, or whatever, and just make it consistent. Now, finally, you say, I did all that, Brian. I did all that. I still have no time. Something's got to give. Open up your phone. Look at your screen time stats. How many hours are you spending on YouTube, IG, follow me, by the way, or Netflix? You may have a little more time than you think. I tend to. I'm not going to lie to you. I looked at my phone. It said I spent 11 hours online. Now, a lot of that's music. I watch way too much YouTube. I don't really spend time on Instagram or TikTok because I use them for business. But I like to go on LinkedIn and Twitter a bit here. Those are kind of my social sites that I actually enjoy. I guess I'm just a big corporate shill. Whatever. But I realized that, hey, that's a ton of time that I could be using. Now, I don't want to be some optimal robot. I don't want to optimize every hour in my day. I want to chill out. I want to just go on a Netflix binge every once in a while. I want to just watch a bunch of YouTube videos, go down rabbit holes and weird conspiracy theories every once in a while. Who doesn't? I'm just saying that you probably have a little bit more time than you think. That half an hour that you can't seem to find, it's there. You just got to find it. You got to pull it out of the muck and figure out how you can make that half an hour, reclaim a half hour or an hour a day that you normally would be doing something that you might really like doing. That's part of the sacrifice for learning a new skill, right? And you're going to probably have to make more sacrifices the further you go in your career or the new things that you want to pick up. And you have to make this time non-negotiable. So you're writing down the plans before the night on a scrap of paper or in that journal next to your bed. You're not doing a cold plunge before you open your laptop. These little tweaks can have a really large impact. Trust me. Now, they're not easy to do. Building a habit is always difficult. That's why you have to make the habit easy. Notebook by your bed. Understanding what the thing is you're going to do in the morning before you get up to do it. Starting the very first thing. It makes it so your success is inevitable. Really hope that's helpful and hope this mini episode serves you well. See you around. By the way, before you head out, I would love to get some feedback from you on the show. Are there topics that you would love to hear about, especially if you're an early career developer or someone who's learning to code? And are there guests we should be reaching out to? I have a ton of guests in the pipeline and some even secret developers that I'm going to bring on and talk about some spicy topics. But I really want to know what you want to learn. I've been doing this for a long time. What do you need to know in order to get to the next level? Hit me up on LinkedIn, find me on Instagram, TikTok, wherever. My contact information is in the show notes, and you can hit me up there whenever. I love to hear from people. See you around. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.